So hi, welcome. As I said, I'm Heather Box. I am the co-founder of the Million Person Project. And the Million Person Project is a global project about love, storytelling, and connecting change makers. And what it is that we do is we support individual leaders and like yourselves to tell their truest personal story as it relates to what they're creating in the world or the message that they have for the world. And so there are so many incredible human beings on this planet, right? Like for me, my mind is blown on a daily basis on how resilient people are and how much wisdom they carry with them. But one of the things that we've noticed is that people really don't value their own experiences as much as you think they would, or I think they would. That people carry all kinds of wisdom that has helped them to navigate their life experiences. But when it comes to sharing that with the world, they're really reserved. And the clients that we work with usually say they usually fall on sort of one extreme of the spectrum. There's a couple things they usually say. It's usually, I don't really think I have a story. Like, I don't really know my story, or my story is way too personal or sad to share publicly. And so that's why the Million Person Project started in the first place, was because we realized that people needed support in weaving in from those two ends of the spectrum and everywhere in between, and being able to own their power and their voice and their story in a way that really supported them in having the impact they wanted in the world. So I'll just give you a little bit of background. Julian and I started this in 2011. And when we started it, it was a total experiment. We thought, the two of us had been organizers and activists and environmental advocates, and we had been working in all kinds of different, sort of social change organizations. And one of the things that we started to see is that we would get the opportunity to go to these incredible gatherings. Like, we went to multiple UN conferences on climate change, in South Africa, in Copenhagen, in Brazil. And we would get the total honor of getting to spend time with incredible change makers from around the world. And so after the meetings, or at dinner that night, or if we were roomed with someone, or we had a long bus ride with someone, we would get talking to them, and we would see, wow, you're so powerful. Like, they would share their stories with us about what brought them to the conference. And then they would say, oh, and by the way, I have a keynote tomorrow, or I have a panel discussion. And we would miss it. So we would rush over and get to the panel or the keynote or whatever they were doing. And we would watch them go on stage, and it would be like, wah, wah. Like, it would just be like dry presentation about all of their work, which their work was cool, but it was like, we would chase them down afterwards and be like, where did you go? How come you didn't share more about who you were and what was driving you? And people always said those same things, like, oh, I feel like I should be telling other people's stories. Aren't other people more interesting than me? Or what, am I going to get up there and just start talking about my grandma? Like, there was really a gap in what people felt like they knew how to present publicly. And what we saw was resulting from that was a much more limited impact, because people couldn't really connect to the person that they were talking to, that they were listening to. And so Julian and I took off 5 years ago on a 3-country tour, Vietnam, South Africa, and Uganda. And we worked through a lot of the networks that we had been working in for years. And we specifically were working around this storytelling curriculum. And the storytelling sort of lineage that we're in is was developed or codified by our mentor, Marshall Gantz, who is an incredible man. He's totally my storytelling guru. And he is a longtime civil rights activist, works with Cesar Chavez, and now he teaches storytelling at Harvard. And we're part of his Leading Change network that's based out of there. And his point is that if you're going to take center stage, if you're going to be a leader in some aspect of your life, that it is your responsibility to really lead in an authentic way where people can actually connect to who you are. And so when we took off with his curriculum and the ways in which we've changed his curriculum with his blessings, we trained over those 3 countries. We trained 625 people in 3 months. It was like every single day we were doing the training, we were revising the curriculum, we were adding new tools to it. And we really realized something that we knew deep inside, that literally every single person in the world has a profound story. And that given space and time to tell that story and some tools to be able to connect, that they can really harness their power in a way that they couldn't when they were just sharing, the details of their work. And so Julia and I came home from that 3-month trip, and we decided that this is what we were going to do with our lives. And what I'm going to share with you today in this class is the 5 steps to get started to tell your story. And I'm going to go a little more in depth on step 1, which is your life map, because I think the life mapping piece is really, really critical. And the life map will help you to explore the things that have brought you to value the things that you value. And what are the life experiences, the turning points, the influential people that have shaped you and your perspective on the world. So I want this to be a really interactive class, and I'd love to have everybody get out a pen and paper right now, because we're going to get started. And I'd also love to hear from a few people in the chat box. If you all can chat and say hello and introduce yourself a little, that would be great. So if you don't know, if you're new to Zoom, the chat is down at the bottom. You just click on the little, that little cartoon thing, that the speech bubble, and then you can chat. So I just want to make sure that you all are here and that you are familiar with the technology, because I want this to be interactive. So can some people chat us? There we go. Great. Hi, Tracy. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Elle. Hi, Mauricio. Heather. Yay, great. All right. So here's the first thing that we're going to do is I want you to get a pen and paper. And here's what I really want to say is that there isn't very much space in our society for practice. And it's kind of like, you're either in your house talking to all of your friends and your family only, or you're on a stage or on the internet speaking to hundreds. And so what I want you to take this next 50 minutes as is practice. You're here, you showed up today. There's something that's drawing you to this story work. And so I want you to really take this opportunity and be vocal in the chat box. the more that you interact, the more that I can support you and tailor what I'm saying to what the people who are in this room right now, this online room, can actually, I can support you in getting what you actually need. So thanks for speaking up. Hey, Delana and Sarah and Josh, yay. So here's the first question. The first thing I want you to do, and don't overthink it, just jot down the first thing that comes to mind, is why is it that you want to tell your story? What impact do you believe that telling your story would have? And anybody who's willing to share in the chat box, that would be great. So why is it that you want to tell your story? To establish common ground, believe my story would help others heal.
Decrease stigma.
To protect babies from toxic chemical exposures, decrease stigma, help to connect with my audience. Yes. So this is the thing, is there is, yeah, this is great. Thank you all for sharing. Yes, healing, breaking stigma, having a bigger impact, getting your message out to the world. All of these things, our stories, people love to sort of say, oh, isn't there someone else better than me to tell the story? And that is like my number one thing that I am, everybody's story is a critical piece of the puzzle. And so whatever people mean by better, isn't there someone better to tell my story? The fact is that we could be waiting all of our lives for that person to step up and break the stigma. We could be waiting for people for all of our lives for people to really, to take a stand on the issue that we're passionate about. But that may never happen. And you right now have that power inside of you to do that. And the thing I want to invite you to look at is that it's not only the impact that you can have in the world, it's the impact sharing your story has on yourself. And there is a true sort of liberation that comes when you are standing in your power and having the impact you want on the world. So that's the first question. The second question is, what is stopping you from sharing that story? Seeing that there's all of these positive things that can come from sharing your story, what is it that you start to negotiate when you think about sharing your story? What stops you up? Shame. Yeah, that's a big one. Embarrassment. Yeah, I see these coming in. It's not just about me. Fear of hurting loved ones. Yeah, these are all the big ones. Hard to find the right context to talk about myself. Feeling vulnerable or stigmatized. Who am I to share my story? Yeah. This is making me trust the internet right now, because I feel like the right people have come to this workshop. These, there's a lot of people out there that are doing storytelling to sell, or, how to tell a really good story. And we're expert storytellers. We know how to tell great stories. We have all the tools. We've been through all the trainings. But at the Million Person Project, what we care about, we don't care about just telling a good story. We care about the storyteller telling their truest story. And that's what some of these things, embarrassment, stigma, worrying about hurting loved ones, these are things that we understand how to negotiate and navigate and to help people to develop their narratives and shift their perspective in a way to see that their story can be told in a way where it can be 100% true to them, but doesn't have to, reveal the identity of other people or that type of thing. And so we'll get into some of that, but I want to hear a couple more people about what's stopping them. Have a value for listening more. Is my story relevant? Yes. These questions are really good. And this idea of having a value for listening more. There's something that there's something that gets said a lot in our culture about us taking up space, and a lot of people say, oh, I want to make space for somebody else. But the truth of the matter is it's about the quality of space that you take up. So if you're a leader and you have 5 minutes to introduce someone else, you can either just get up there and casually introduce why you're hosting this symposium on mental health, or why you're hosting the symposium on toxics in the environment. You can take that 5 minutes to, that 5 minutes to just sort of like introduce yourself casually, or you can ground into the things that are most important to you and share in that way. And when you do that, it really is an act of generosity. To share your truest personal story is not easy. And the audience can see that. And they feel like, wow, this person is really giving me a gift by being all of who they are up there and breaking the sort of cultural norms of like, I'm not going to talk about things that are hard. And so some of the other things that are stopping people is, what exactly is my story? What's the right one to choose to help me further my mission, achieve my goals, and reach success? So these are all questions that the 5 steps that I'm going to tell you are going to help you address. But first, I just want to hear a couple more answers to another question, which is, what is the opportunity if you do decide to overcome those obstacles and actually tell your story? What might happen in the world? What's the opportunity for you and for the people listening to you if you decide to tell your story? So let's say you were invited to tell your story in front of a crowd of 40 people who were audience members that you wanted to reach. If you were able to tell your story in a way that made you feel powerful and grounded and truthful, what is the opportunity that you might have? What might be created in that room? And I'd love to hear from a few of you in the chat. Yeah, to help other people with similar struggles. Yeah, common ground, helping people through similar struggles, empower someone else, an opportunity to normalize discomfort and make room for authentic connection. Yes, and this is why I'm so glad that this particular group of people showed up here today, because this what you guys are talking about, what you all are talking about, is culture shift. Shifting culture so that people can feel more more relaxed and normalized in their own experience. Inspire people to see the other side, move people to take actions that will have an effect on change, have confidence to step up as a social change agent. These are all very, very important things. And what I really feel is that we hold back a lot of times because of other people. We think, oh, I don't want to make them uncomfortable with my story. I'll just stay in my box because I don't want to put myself out there and I don't want to become like that girl. or that woman or that man. And that's what our culture tells us to do. That's the norm. But what this work does, what the story work that you all are embarking on, shifts culture to say, hey, I'm coming out of my box. I don't want to be in this box. I put myself in this box for your sake. And the truth is that when we step out of our boxes, that we really invite other people to be their whole selves and to share about their experiences. And I know everybody in this room, this like internet room, has had the experience of when you share and people say, me too, you know, and they say, you know, wow, thank you so much for saying that. No one's ever that honest. I also know that there is something very real about stigma and about people judging other people for specific life experiences. And this is what I really want to say to that, is that if we want to live our lives navigating that, it's like we sever our connection with ourselves, because we're always having to judge, oh, what is this person going to think of me? What is this person going to think of me? Instead of saying, this is my experience. This is the truest thing that I know. And take it or leave it. Makes you feel weird? Like, that's not something that you as the storyteller can really hold. And, you know, there's also very real stigmas where people might be fired from their job or disowned from their family. And these are huge subjects. And they're big personal decisions. But something that I always say is that you have one life to live as the person that you are. And if someone is going to disown you or, you know, is going to ostracize you for something that happened to you or something that you did, is that really who you want to be on this journey with? In the limited amount of days that you have on planet Earth, you know, how can we be our full selves and find the people who accept us for who we are? Because I guarantee you that they are out there. And so yeah, and this is the thing that I see every single day in my job. It's so inspiring. People come to me and they say, you know, I have this big opportunity. I have a TED Talk, or I'm keynoting this event. And I know I could just tell my story about the nonprofit I run or about the advocacy issue I'm working on, but I don't want to just be seen as my work. I want to be recognized for who I am, for the things that are most important to me as a human. I want to tell them why I really dedicated my life to this work. But that feels really like a big personal piece to put in the speech. And so I get to work with people, even if they have only 3 minutes for their personal part of their speech and they have, you know, 18 minutes for the rest. I will work with them to make those 3 minutes the most moving, grounded, truthful 3 minutes that lets people understand what it is that's driving them. And I can't tell you how much that adds to the talk. How much, when the audience has context for who you are and what you've been through, how much more beautifully connected the room is. And so I see that you all see that there's a lot to gain from sharing your story. Everything from creating social change to breaking stigma to inspiring others. And now the last question before I go into my life map and show you an example of a life map is, what do you personally feel like you would gain if you shared your story? What's the word or the feeling that you would get if you were public with your story? If you just stopped negotiating and you stood in all of who you were? Freedom, I see. Yeah. What else? What else do people feel like they would gain personally if they were sharing their story? it's a big question because it's usually wrapped up in like, well, there's things you would gain and things that you would, have to navigate. But yes, freedom, accomplished, cleansed, opportunities to have a bigger impact, and maybe more security and respect, credibility across diverse audiences. Yes. Yes. And these are, connection. These are all really, really big things. And as someone who worked in politics for so long and tried to make change on that level, there's a lot of work that goes into trying to create, systematic change. And there's a lot of mornings that I woke up after working for months and months and months and months on a campaign to only have nothing, to only have lost by whatever, 1,200 votes, and to have nothing change. And that was really something that drove me to this work, was because what story work does is like if you shared your story once with 30 people, I believe that you could forever impact someone in that room, maybe the whole room, and that it would forever impact you. And that the change on the cultural level is so important. Yes. And so I hear that people feel like for themselves, it would be grounding, build confidence, allow them to practice that which they love, which is helping people in pain, self-fulfillment. Yes, there's so much to gain on a personal level from sharing your story. And it's not just like, it's not incremental. It's transformative. Like when I watch my clients share for the first time they've ever shared, it blows my mind, the types of things they say. They say things like, I've never felt this free and connected to what I'm doing ever. I just had a client who is working on something called the Depression Grand Challenge, which is a big, huge, massive university research project to solve depression by the end of the century. And she shared her story for the first time with a group of 40 or 50 people. And she read it off the page. It wasn't a memorized, perfect paced speech. She read it off the page, but she delivered it with emotion and connection to herself. And I was in the room. The transformation in that room from like, oh, let me come hear about this university project, to like, whoa, like what you're willing to say up there right now is connecting deeply to me. And it was so incredible to watch that. And she had only gone through one of our 2-day workshops. Like it was kind of on a whim that she whipped this up. And even with that, there was so much freedom and connection for her in doing that. And she just forwarded me an email yesterday of someone who was in the room. And I can't say which publication it is yet, but because it's not public, but a major publication wants to do a series on this challenge and wants her story to center, wants her to write the 3 articles around her story and why she's involved in this. And the reason why they said it, Julian and I were both laughing because we said, we swear we didn't feed them that line. The reason they said that is, after hearing your story, I understand how deeply committed you are to this work. And that makes me want you to be at the center of this project that we're doing with this publication. And so that's the opportunity for people. There's this grounding, confidence, fulfilling, helping others. And there's also you stepping into your leadership in a level that you may not be right now, and having the impact, being able to impact more people than you are right now. And so thank you all for going through those questions with me. And that's what I want out of the first half hour of this class is for you all to be in touch with the opportunity that you have if you're willing to make a bigger impact. If you're willing to step up and have a bigger impact on the world, the opportunity for you and others is big. And I want you to carry that with you. If this is the last time you ever see me and this is the last class you ever take from us, I hope that you walk away from this knowing my story has power to both transform me, the world, and the people that I'm talking to. And I'm not crazy. I understand people are shy and that they don't like to be in front of groups. I'm not requiring that everybody on the planet get up and give a speech to 10,000 people. You don't have to be an extrovert to do this work. It's about if it's the 18 people in your community group that get to hear your story, I trust that there will be a transformative connection between you and them. And so thank you all for going through that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lead us through the 5 steps that you can do to get started telling your story. And here's why. Because a lot of people say, okay, great, I get that my story has power. I get that there's a big impact, potential impact on the world if I share it, on me, on my family. But like, what do I just go like that? Like, and then I was born and, 45 minutes later, the people listening to you are like, oh my gosh, like she's going on and on, And so there is a process to be able to hone your story in a way, whether you have 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 45 minutes to share your story. And that's where Gantz's philosophy comes in. And so that's our 5th step. And so I'll show you briefly what that is. But what I want you to understand is that before you're able to hone, you first have to understand what the values and belief systems inside your story are. And so I have found with Julian that the life map is the best way to do that. And our friend and mentor, Rosa Gonzalez, she helped us to develop this and utilize this in tandem with the curriculum. And so this is a life map. And usually there's a lot more points on it, but I'm just going to share like the 4 or 5 minute version with you right now so that you can see an example of a life map. And then I want you, we don't have time for us to sit here and, go through the process of you all having a half an hour or 45 minutes to develop your life map. But I'd love for you to write down some of the prompts of the life map. And so on another sheet of paper, if you all can write at the top, influential people, turning points, moments you'll never forget, moments of challenge, moments of celebration, and values/beliefs. So I want you all to look for that in my life map when I'm sharing a bit about who I am and what has made me come to the Million Person Project. And what I want to say about this life map is that this is not a when I give speeches, I don't give this speech. This is for me. And this is for me to understand my foundational values and belief systems. And then what I do is I put this into Marshall Gantz's formula and I develop a speech out of it. So let me just get right into it, and chat me if you can chat questions along the way or comments. It's okay. Don't feel like you're interrupting me. So I was born in Sebastopol, California, which is an hour north of San Francisco, and I'm the youngest, and it's my sister, my mom, and my dad. And I put a heart and the word safe there because I think it was the three of these people's goals to really keep the baby safe. And I liked it there in that bubble. It was nice. And I also grew up in a town and in a community where our doors were never locked. We never locked our doors. Like when I got a car, I never even brought the keys in from the car. I would just leave them on the cushion because there was no point. It was so fun. It was like there was no such thing as strangers. There were strangers all over, but they were just people to talk to, and people would invite you in. And my sister and I did all kinds of door-to-door, selling magazines and that kind of stuff. And we were so comfortable and so sort of free in our town. And then a couple of days before I turned 12 years old, I woke up one morning and I walked into the kitchen where my mom was, where she always was, at the coffee maker. And I could see before she even turned around that there was something really wrong. I could feel it. And she turned around and she said, Jessica's little sister was kidnapped last night. And so what had happened was, in the town over from ours, a man had walked into my friend's little sister's house, and he had tied up her two friends who she was hanging out with, and he had kidnapped her. And so we searched for Polly for 32 days. And after those 32 days, we found her dead. And after that happened, it was like my whole entire sense of safety went out the window. And I started to see strangers as the scariest people in the world. I started to run from people, be scared of the dark. I was so afraid of everything. And during that period, once they found the man, Richard Allen Davis, they caught him, and the court cases for Polly went on and on and on. And there would literally be thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the streets outside of the courtroom to support Polly. And there was no one. There wasn't even a single person there for Richard Allen Davis, not even his parents. No one. And the isolation that I saw him going through was really scary to me. And I really wondered, how do people get that isolated? I don't want anyone to ever feel like that. And it was really disturbing to me too, because it was kind of like in the movie Frozen, the whole town was after this guy. And obviously this guy was deeply disturbed, and something terribly wrong had gone on in his life to bring him to do that. And so I remember this feeling that I now call attempted rescue, which was, I made it my mission I didn't want anyone to feel alone. And I felt so afraid of other people feeling alone that I made it my job to try to help them. But it was not coming from a good place. It was coming from trying to relieve anxiety. It wasn't coming from sincerely helping someone who had asked for help. It was people who did not ask for my help. And I would just try to help them frantically. And during this time period, someone really close to me had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And when that happened, I saw how instantly, like, people didn't reach for understanding. People reached to be like, what's going on? That something seems like going on there. Like, and the isolation began. And I started to see where that begins is when we don't reach for someone when they are going through something and we pull away. I started to see like, oh my God, this is so not the world I want to live in, where people tap into their fear as opposed to their love. And it really, really fueled me in college. I became really passionate about helping people to know that there was support out there, but still in this way of like trying to heal something inside of me and not in a very sincere way. And I started to realize more and more when I was in college that a lot of what was causing this isolation was systematic things, like the way that we make laws around, the way that we make laws around immigration, around mental illness, around, all of these things that put people behind bars and just keep them there for way longer when really what they're trying to do is call for help. And so it really fueled my desire to be involved in systematic change. And so after college, I moved to New York and I got a job with Hillary Clinton, and I was so excited. And I was in her immigration department and I was so pumped up. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna like be with Pantsuit Nation lady and we're gonna change the world. And then flash forward 6 months after that, I quit because we were 8,000 cases behind. She had no real interest in constituent services. She was not a human first politician, not to talk bad about her, but I think maybe all politicians get too wrapped up in the election and the media, and the constituents that they're supposed to be serving are falling by the wayside. And so I quit. And that's when I found this group of people, the League of Pissed Off Voters, Marshall Gantz, the storyteller, and 350.org. And all of them were saying, hey, we don't need Hillary Clintons of the world. We need to build our power bases, and we need to build up our groups of people and politicize them to become the Hillary Clintons of the world. So we can start a human first, political system. And I was so excited. I met Julian during that period. We fell in love. It was so exciting. And Julian and I found this story work, and we were really doing it on the side. And it was really exciting and generative. And we saw how much it was helping to develop connections within the groups we were working in. And then in 2009, I had the total honor of spending 3 of the last days of my grandpa's life with him. And I was by his bedside. And when I was going through that period, those 3 days, like, he was 92 and he was one of the most important people to me. And when I was going through that, one of the things I realized is how important his stories were to me and how much I was carrying his stories with me. And I felt like I was living in his legacy. And then I started to do the math and realized that he started telling me his stories 7 years ago when he was 85 years old, and that he didn't tell his sons and daughters these stories. He had kept them to himself. He waited around for his grandchildren and to be an old man before he started talking about what he had truly been through in life. And standing there by his bedside, I was like, imagine if he would have gone to the grave with these stories. Like, who would I be without them? And I came home from saying goodbye to him, and I said to Julian, I don't want us to do the story work on the side anymore. Not only does it help us be better leaders and have more impactful community work, but it also makes us more meaningful to our families and to our friends. And everybody is struggling to be able to tell their own story. And so that, for me, that's when Julian and I put the seeds in the ground right away for the Million Person Project and started to develop our curriculum. And that's what grew us into the Million Person Project today. So that's my life map. And thank you for listening. And I'm not used to doing my life map in a one-sided format like this. So it feels kind of embarrassing to talk for 8 minutes and then just not know what the reactions are. But every time I tell that story and those stories, they're the truest stories that I have. And they really drive me. And thank you for acknowledging that, Amina and Josh and Elnora. So why I wanted to share this map with you is so that you can see how incredibly, I only followed the prompts to make this map. When you follow the prompts of turning points, influential people, moments you'll never forget, moments of challenge, moments of celebration, and then those values and belief systems. When you follow the prompts and make your life map, you can really start to generate parts of your story that you start to make connections that you may not have before. And so that's what I want the homework to be for all of you, is to create this life map. And I'll send a follow-up email with those talking points. With those prompt points, so that you can do this life map. And so that's step one. Step one is create a life map. And that, I don't want to one of the pieces of feedback that I get a lot, and so does Julian, is we're so into stories that we tend to overwhelm people with like all the most exciting things all at once about stories. And people are like, oh my God, give me a break. I'm still thinking about the turning points. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by the next 4 steps I'm going to give you. I'm just going to tell you what they are. So, because what I don't want you to do is to get stuck in your life map and think, yeah, but I couldn't share that whole thing with everybody. So that's not the point. The life map's for you. That's step 1. Step 2 is to identify the values that are in the life map. What were some of the values that you felt guided you in your life? Stories are vehicles for values. So it's not about what happened to you or about what you did. It's about who you've chosen to be given that. And so step 2 is identify the values that came up in your life map. And so once you have that, those first 2 steps are for you to be like, my values are human connection, truth and honesty, and love. And this has been the journey to those ones. And the value of human connection and seeing people for more than their worst experience is really important to me. And that's what the Million Person Project is really based on. That's how I came to it. So that's the stories are vehicles for values. Step 3 is when you turn to your audience and you start to think, who is your audience and what is your specific goal? So when people think about their audience, a lot of times they think, I want to help everybody in the world. But when we're thinking about our audience, we actually want you to choose one person. The one person in the audience, either a real person or the person that you imagine would be in the audience. And we want you to think, what impact are you working to have on just that one person? Story, the more specific the story, the more universal. It's like when we go into the specifics of our story, even though you may not relate, this may not have been your life experience, you can understand the values and sort of what I was going through in that story in a whole nother way. So step 3 is identifying the specific audience member and the goal that you have for that audience member, both the action that you want them to take and the shift in thinking that you want them to have. And then the 4th step is, given that audience member, pulling out one thread from your story and sharing it with that audience member. So say, for example, I was telling a story, which I often do. I tell stories a lot about the power of strangers and the power of trusting ourselves to trust strangers. And I have a stranger party every year. And so I do a lot of speaking around strangers. And so it's really important for people to understand that this didn't just come to me because I love people. I have gone through a really, really deep healing process to believe that our safety is within each other. And that when we isolate from each other and when we are scared of one another, that we're actually denying ourselves such an important connection with ourselves. And so that's something I talk about. So if my audience member I was talking to someone about being, let's say I'm trying to think of something that I've done recently. I'll speak to people about the importance of having more inclusive organizing principles so that you don't have to be a certain type of person to be involved in the project, but how can businesses and organizations be more inclusive? So if that was my audience member, if I knew that my audience member was the CEO of this business that is working to make their teams more inclusive, I would say the value there is seeing the power in people that are different than you. And so I would talk about it in the lens of strangers because that's the language I use. But then I would pull that thread out. So that's step 4, is pull out the thread of your story that relates to the goal that you're having with your audience member. And then step 5 is putting your story in the Marshall Gantz story of self, story of us, story of now framework. And so a lot of people say, well, isn't me telling my story just all about me? And it's not. What your story, what this framework does is it helps you to connect with your audience in a deeper way. So you tell your story so that they can understand your why and your values. And then you connect that to the audience in the story of us. So you say, I'm so happy to be in this room speaking to all of you because I know you also value the power of inclusivity and what can happen when you work and relate with people who are so different than you. It's about connecting that personal to the feelings and the values of the people in the room. Story of self, story of us, that's the connection piece, and then the story of now, which is the invitation. What is your invitation to the audience after you share? What's your ask? So those are the 5 steps, and the homework for you all, if you choose, is to create your life map, because that really is the building block. And so I see a question here from Sam, and I'd love to answer a couple more questions. But the answer I have here from Sam is, can your audience be yourself? So Sam, what I would say to that, Samuel, is I would say that you can use your audience, you can use what you know about yourself and your experiences to sort of draw a connection with your audience. Like you can think, oh, well, they probably think that because that's how I thought. But you really want to choose an audience member outside of you, because it will give you the accountability to give them the context that they need to understand where you're coming from. So I would say choose someone who maybe has a similar life experience to you, but think about their values, but don't only think about yourself when developing the audience. Great question, Stephanie. So is this framework intended for just speeches, or does it cover other mediums like online, websites, social media, etc.? Yeah, it definitely, for me, this framework has changed my life, my writing, my videos I make, the speeches I give, because this framework can definitely be used in writing and videos and at the front of webinars or wherever it is that you're getting your story out to the world. This Self Us Now framework can work. And then Mauricio, the story of now. Yeah, so the story of now is really just what it is that you're asking your audience to do. So the story of now goes over the urgent need for action. So why are you even speaking on this issue right now? The invitation you have for the audience or the ask, and then your vision for the future. And so the story of now is where you would say, and so that's why I'm asking you to invest, $2,500 today in the initiative to protect immigrant families from the ICE raids that are happening in San Francisco. Say that's where the story of now would be that. So we're coming up on the end of the hour, and good, I'm glad that was clear. So we're coming up on the end of the hour, and I just want to thank all of you for joining our class today. And I also want to thank you for being brave and doing the class, chatting in the chat. It's not easy, and I know that. And it takes quite a bit of trust to jump on to a class and just believe that there's something there for you. And so I hope it was my intention to give you value today and to support you in really going to the next level with your story. And so that for me is what my intention was. And I also want to say to all of you that this is literally a huge part of what I live for. Like, I love to work with people on their stories. The freedom that I get from working with people on their story and watching them step into their freedom and their wholeness and their power is so inspiring to me. And so the way that we work at the Million Person Project is we run programs like this online to support people in telling their truest personal story and going through those 5 steps with you over the course of months. So we have 2 programs. We have a 3-month home study course that if everybody in this group joined, given what you all were chatting about, I would be overjoyed. And so our 3-month home study course starts at the end of this month. And it's you get something from us weekly for 3 months. You either get a video with the instructional homework, and then you get the next week we get a 45-minute accountability call with the small group that's going through that with you. So it would be like this over the course of 3 months. And what our plan is and what we intend and what we have had, what happens in our other classes that we've done like this, is that by the end of the 3 months, you have one narrative totally ready to share with the world. So whether it's to that 18-person community meeting or it's your TEDx talk, we are ready to support you in developing that narrative and getting it out to the world. So that's our 3-month home study course, and I would love for you all to join. For 3 months, it's $1,500. You can pay that $500 a month, or you can pay in full for $1,250. We also, because you guys joined the live training, we're also offering it today until noon on Friday. We're offering it to all of you for $9.97. And so that's a really good deal. What we're not passive coaches. We want to support you in really taking that leap. It's 3 months of your life. It's a couple hours a week. We want you to at least invest 2 hours a week. And we are going to work with you to take a step out into the world that you may not if you don't have this support. I see people think about telling their story for years and years and years. We're going to ensure, if you're in our small group, that you're out there and that you're taking that step. So that's our home study course, and I'm going to send you the link right after this call. I'm going to send you the link with the promo code. I can also put it in the chat here. The promo code is live workshop when you check out, and that's what will give you the $9.97 price. And then the other thing that we do is if you're willing and ready to go super big with your story, we take on 15 clients a year in our intensive one-on-one coaching program where you work with me every 3 weeks, and we're really supporting you in taking your speaking and your writing and everything to the next level. And that's an intensive program. It requires, I say, like, think about it as taking a college class. It takes 4 or 5 hours a week. You're really being asked to step out in a whole new way. It's $6,500 for the 6 months. And so it's a big investment. It's a big time investment. But if this is calling to you and you're ready to go big with your story, I'm so ready to go big with you. And I don't take on 1 million clients. I want to be able to support my clients really intensively and be in partnership with them. So yeah, so those are our offerings. And I would love for any and all of you to join us. And if you are on the fence and you want to talk to me or to Julian, you can book a 30-minute call with us, and you can, and we'll talk you through it. Like I said, this pricing is good until tomorrow at noon. So book that call like today or tomorrow, or just send me an email and let me know what you're thinking. And I will make it a priority and hop on the phone with you. And so will Julian. He's ready. So thank you all so much for being here and for sticking around to the end, and for being willing to be yourselves, and for understanding that you and your story is part of breaking stigma, creating more understanding in the world, that your story carries such power with you to really transform our culture. And the longer that we wait with our stories, the more of the same we'll have in our culture. And so I want to invite all of you to think about today as a turning point and to really go big with your stories. So thank you all for being here. And I'd love to close with the quote that drives Julian and I both, and that is sort of the center of our household and the center of the Million Person Project. So that is, the subject tonight is love, and tomorrow night as well. As a matter of fact, I know of no better subject for us to discuss until we all die. And that's Hafiz. So thank you for being here. Thanks for being your full selves. Please let me know if you have any questions, and sign up for that 30-minute call, or sign up for the course. Bye.